Let's bring in now Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee and is in The Hague on a congressional delegation to the NATO summit. President Trump heading there as well later today. Senator Coons, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Obviously, the conflict in the Middle East now a major topic of discussion where you are there at NATO. Give us your assessment. What do we know so far about the damage that was indeed inflicted on Iran's nuclear sites? Because we heard from the president initially, total annihilation. But since then, the administration has had to acknowledge that these assessments take time. They're less certain. What's the latest intel the Senate's received?
Well, I'm here and have not received a classified update or a battle damage assessment, but you're broadly right that it inevitably takes days, if not weeks, to know exactly what a strike accomplished or didn't accomplish. And the talk of the town here at the NATO summit is the commitment of all 32 members to significantly step up their investment in defense, in joint support for Ukraine's fight for freedom against Russian aggression, and in our European allies and partners taking on more of the military burden of collective security here in Europe. But we will have to wait for more days to know whether or not Iran's dangerous nuclear program has in fact been ended. A number of the European leaders we've already met with, Senator Shaheen is leading this delegation, have said this morning that if we have accomplished the end of the nuclear program by Iran, that would be a great thing, a big accomplishment. But it is today completely unclear whether the Iranians relocated some of their fissile material before the American strikes on Fordo and Isfahan, and whether or not they retain or might gain from Russia or other partners a renewed capability to enrich.
Senator Coons, this is Susan Page. So lots of ifs, but if the ceasefire holds, if there's significant damage to the Iranian nuclear program, if they return to the table, does that mean that President Trump was right to drop those bombs Saturday night?
Look, I will, of course, agree that ending Iran's nuclear program would be a real positive for the region and for the United States. Exactly how we went about it, the lack of consultation with Congress, the lack of advance notice, I think was a mistake. And we don't know for sure what the real objective of the administration is. We had on the same day Vice President Vance on a Sunday show saying we are really only focused on ending the enrichment program, and then the president tweeting about maybe regime change isn't such a bad thing. I think it's important to move to diplomacy, to find a way to make the ceasefire hold, and to get Israel and Iran, the United States and our European partners at the table to secure a permanent end to Iran's dangerous effort to enrich uranium to bomb levels and develop a nuclear weapon.
And of course, the administration yesterday also saying after that tweet, they're focused not on regime change, but the destruction of the program. I want to ask you before we talk about what you're going to be discussing in The Hague today. I want to ask you about the Middle East and just talking about the transformation there with David Ignatius. How much safer is the Middle East with Hamas destroyed or nearly destroyed, with Hezbollah severely damaged, Islamic Jihad severely damaged, with Iran the weakest militarily it's been since 1979? Again, we don't know what's going to happen with the ceasefire, but over the past several months, these enemies of Israel and America, their terror networks have been shattered. How does that transform the Middle East and the world?
Look, it significantly transforms the Middle East to have Hezbollah and Hamas and the proxies in Iraq largely degraded. The Houthis are still actively engaged. As you know, they, until very recently, were firing at American ships in the Red Sea and interdicting commerce and firing on Israel. And frankly, the ongoing war in Gaza, which gets too little attention in this moment, also needs to come to an end. Humanitarian relief needs to be delivered into Gaza. Hamas needs to be removed from Gaza completely. And there needs to be a resolution to that a piece of this that began with the brutal, aggressive attack on civilians by Hamas on October 7th. So what Israel has accomplished in terms of their strikes on Hezbollah and their success in really tamping down the regional proxies of Iran that have posed so much of a threat to Israel for decades is nothing short of spectacular. But the ongoing war in Gaza needs to be brought to an end. If Prime Minister Netanyahu could find his way towards embracing a two-state solution, he has right in front of him the possibility of reconciliation with Saudi Arabia, the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and full integration of Israel into the region. That's something that a number of us, a bipartisan group of senators, went over to meet with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the leader of Egypt, and Prime Minister Netanyahu just a few weeks after October 7th. It is clearly something that is still possible. Israel has achieved security, but that security won't last until there's an end to the war in Gaza and a resolution of the Arab-Israeli conflict, now decades old. But that may now be possible. And so, as you were discussing with David Ignatius just a moment ago, Joe, we can and should dream of the possibility of peace in the region, but it's going to require some significant changes and compromises, and I think American leadership.
Sam Steins with us has a question. Sam, just reading the news out of The Hague yesterday and looking how Great Britain and other countries in NATO are pledging to get to 5% GDP for the military spending. That is significant. That's something that even when I was in Congress, I was hearing members on the Republican and Democratic side saying that, Europe needs to step up and do more for the military funding. It looks like they're moving in that direction. A last-minute glitch from Spain, but we'll see how that gets ironed out at the NATO conference.
Yeah, I just want to take a second to marvel at what the senator just said. An end to the Arab-Israeli conflict within reason. I remember being a student 2 decades ago at Dartmouth writing my thesis on the Arab-Israeli conflict, thinking there was never going to be a resolution. But I suppose all these dominoes are falling in a certain direction. Perhaps we can dream big about that. As for NATO, Senator, I do want to ask you about this gathering. When the meeting was planned, obviously the Iran-Israeli conflict was not a thing. Now it is, of course, but it clearly has impacts on other theaters. And I was watching an interview with Zelensky, President Zelensky of Ukraine this morning, where he was talking about the way in which he was worried that the Iranian conflict might bleed into the Ukrainian conflict and how it might hurt weapons supplies to Ukraine. At the same time, of course, we have Russia, who has come out and said, look, the attacks on Iran, we vehemently oppose, and that they're going to help facilitate Iranians' achievement of a nuclear weapon. So can you talk about those two contributing factors to the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how the current crisis in Iran might affect all that?
Yes. Well, Sam, as we all know, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, its aggression against Ukraine, faltered as the Ukrainians stood strong and with Western help began to push back. And so Russia now, a year and a half ago, brought in Iranian drones and Iranian resources to help bolster their fight against Ukraine. They've also more recently brought in North Korean troops. And so as the Ukrainian conflict, as Russia's aggression against Ukraine has changed, there's been dramatic modernization of drone warfare. And there is now the very real risk that Russia, having lost one close partner in the region in Syria, will now decide to come to Iran's aid to repay their support for Russia's aggression against Ukraine by helping them with moving towards a bomb, or at least ensuring that their enrichment program does not come to an end. We will be meeting with President Zelensky later today here. And I think it's important that Americans realize that our adversaries around the world are coordinating and coalescing in critical and in threatening ways. In past NATO summits, there have been Indo-Pacific partners at the table, leaders from, for example, Japan and South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. The potential threat of Chinese aggression against Taiwan is not that far removed from the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And it is connected to Iran and Iran's aggressive actions in the Middle East by Iran's projection of drone technology into Russia and aiding Russia's aggression against Ukraine.
All right, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, thank you so much for being with us on this very busy day for you. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.